In this lesson, we're going to cover storage devices. In the storage devices, we're going to talk about hard drives, the traditional magnetic drives. We're going to talk about the SSD drives, which are the solid state drives. And we're going to talk about other forms of storage. So let's go ahead and get started. The history of hard drives dates back over 50 years, and a lot has advanced since then. Currently, solid state drives are beginning to be more widely used than traditional magnetic hard drives that we've become accustomed to using. Magnetic drives, what we commonly call hard drives, use a magnetism to store data. Now, inside this magnetic drive, there are spinning platters that spin very quickly. Moving across these spinning platters is an actuator arm that moves back and forth across the platters, reading and writing information to the magnetized platter. Now, because these drives have moving parts, there's a tendency over time for these parts to wear out or become damaged. And this leads to a hard drive failure or loss of data if there was no backup previously made. Now, when a magnetic drive is functioning properly, the round platters are spinning at a very high speed, and the actuator arm moves across the disk back and forth, reading and writing information. The faster the platters spin, the faster the actuator arm reads and writes data to the drive. Now, let's talk about some form factors here. Now, we're familiar with the 3.5 drives. Those are the standard hard drives that would be in our servers and our larger equipment, like the desktops and so forth. But there's also the 2.5 drives. These are a smaller form factor. These are used where generally where space is limited, like laptops, mobile devices, but some servers use these drives as well. The benefit for the 2.5 drives is lower power consumption, they're quieter. Um, as far as the 3.5 drives, they're bigger and they use a little bit more power and they're sometimes noisier as well. Now, our magnetic drives, they are manufactured to operate at different speeds, or we call revolutions per minute, RPMs. Just like you would say in a car, like miles per hour, but this is revolutions per minute. So the lowest RPM is the 5400 series. The 5400 drives, this is suitable for most average desktops and laptops. This is your general mobile devices, your laptops, your desktops. Your general speed hard drive is acceptable for that speed. Then you have the 7200. Now, the 7200 drives, again, they're used in laptops and the desktops as well, but they're a little bit faster. Their writing speed is about 120 megabits per second, which is about 20% faster than the previous drive, the 5400s. Then, as we move up the ladder, we look at the 10,000 RPMs. Now, this drive is more suitable for servers and high demand systems where the need to write data is critical or quickly. You need to write it quickly. And remember, what we said before, the faster the platters spin and the faster the arm moves is the faster that it can read and write data. So this is where you're coming to that 10,000 RPM drive where it's moving faster and it writes data faster. So this is for higher performance systems. Then we move to the 15,000 RPM systems. This drive is suitable for servers and higher demand systems where data availability is critical. And again, the writing average write speed here is 300 megabits per second. So as the magnetic drives increase in speed, the heat they generate and the power to operate them becomes a factor as well. You need to consider this when you're selecting which drive would be used for what application and what purpose. Solid state drives, or SSDs, have become popular over recent years for use in mobile devices, desktop computers, and servers. One of the reasons they're so popular is that they're new moving parts. They're basically non volatile memory. And because of this, you can quickly access information using speeds that's well surpasses traditional hard drives. The speeds that you would access for a solid state drive is just like on a flash memory, very, very fast. There are no delays in accessing this information that you would get with a traditional magnetic drive. For laptops and desktop computers, you have to use a 2.5 SATA SSD because that's the standard format for those SATA drives. Non volatile memory express, or NVMe. This is an open logic device interface specification developed to allow modern SSDs to operate at read and write speeds that their flash memory is capable of. Um, The NVMe's is again a protocol for flash and next generation solid state drives that delivers high throughput and fast response times. Essentially, it allows flash memory to operate an SSD directly to the PCIe interface to the PCIe bus lane. Now, NVMe is a protocol that describes the connection types used to read and write data. Now, NVMe's are more expensive than solid state drives. Their speeds are much higher um, than the regular solid state drives as well. Now, the common form factors for the NVMe's are the add in card, the AIC, M.2, and U.2. Now, as we can see, as far as the speeds are concerned, they're faster than regular SATA SSDs. uh, 3.5 gigabytes per second versus the 600 megabytes per second for SATA. And again, they're more expensive than the regular SATAs as well. Now, speaking of SATA, let's dig into the SATA a little bit. SATA is the serial AT attachment, or SATA. This when SATAs came out on the market back in 2003, they were replacing the PATA, the PATA interface. The SATA revision currently is up to SATA 3. Bandwidth throughput is at 600 megabits a second. Now, SATA's again was once the most common interface for magnetic and SSD drives. However, the movement is moving towards the M.2 support. Another interface that you'll see on your motherboards is the PCIe. We've talked about it a little bit in detail in previous lessons and in this lesson, so let's jump in a little bit more. The PCIe, or the Peripheral Component Interconnect Express. This standard, it was for connecting high-speed components. Communicates serially, meaning there is a unidirectional serial lanes. There's lanes that it sends the information from the component to the device. Now, you'll see this often written as an X1, X4, X8, X16. The number after the X represents the number of lanes and the number of bits per cycle. So if you had an X4, it's 4 lanes, and that's the information that is exchanging. Currently, the PCIe is in its 6th version. And you can see the versions right here and the speed that has been introduced as those versions got higher. Now, as far as form factors are concerned, let's look at the M.2 drives. And again, M.2 is another interface type in the SSD family. Correct, connects directly to the motherboard, and this gives direct access to the PCIe bus system of the computer. There are no SATA connections involved, such as in the standard SSDs. The M.2 drives connect directly to the motherboard and the PCIe bus through a specialized connector. Now, this connector, and it's a unique keying sequence that happens with this connector. Um, there is a key at the bottom of the drive plugging into the interface on the motherboard. This key could either be a B or an M or a B plus M key. And as you can see from the diagram here, the different key slots for the different components of the M.2 drives. It could be either a B key or M key or B and M key. The B key is equals out to like 2 PCIe lanes, whereas the M key equates out to 4 PCIe lanes. M-SATA is another form factor we need to look at. The M-SATA SSD is a solid-state drive that conforms to the M-SATA interface specification developed by Serial ATA, or the SATA International Organization. Now, an M-SATA SSD has a smaller form factor than a standard SSD, and it's designed for use with portable, power-constrained devices such as laptops, tablets, and netbooks. Now, although they can still be found in some older laptops and devices, M-SATA SSDs are increasingly being replaced by M.2. The M-SATA SSD flash storage is used in commercial products such as digital signs, point-of-sale devices, retail kiosks, and multifunctional printers. The M-SATA SSD is roughly the size of a business card, very small form factor. The advantage of the SSD in this M-SATA format, it includes a small form factor, lower power consumption than a standard SSD, shock and vibration resistance, and fast boot and shutdown capabilities. Now, the maximum bandwidth of an M-SATA SSD is about 6 gigabits per second. Now let's look at RAID levels and let's talk about what RAID levels are and how this can help with our storage. Now, RAID, or the redundant array of inexpensive disk or drives, or redundant array of independent disk, is a data storage virtualization technology that combines multiple physical disk drive components into one or more logical units for the purpose of data redundancy, performance improvement, or both. Now, RAID works by placing data on a number of disks and allowing the input operations to overlap in a balanced way across those disks, improving the performance. Now, because the use of multiple disks increases the mean time between failures, storing data redundantly also increases the fault tolerance. Now, RAID appears to the operating system as a single drive. It doesn't appear as four drives, six drives, or whatever is being used. It's a single drive. And RAID also, it's mirroring these copies of identical data onto more than one drive. Striping partitions each drive's storage space until the units ranging from sectors of 512 bytes up to several megabytes. Now, the stripes of all the disks are interleaved and addressed in order. So let's look at some different RAID levels. But before we do that, let's talk about different types of RAID. You have hardware RAID and you have software RAID. In hardware RAID, the drives are connected to a RAID controller card, and this is inserted into the PCIe Express slot on the motherboard. This works for the same for large servers as well as desktop computers. Many external RAID enclosures have a RAID controller card built into that enclosure. Then you have what's called software RAID. Now, software RAID, the storage drives are connected directly to the computer or the server without a RAID controller card. RAID configuration is managed by the utility software in the operating system, which was referred to as a software RAID setup. Numerous operating systems support RAID configuration, including Apple, Microsoft, Linux, OpenBSD, FreeBSD, and others. RAID levels. Let's look at different RAID levels because there's different ways that you can configure your drives for different storage and redundancy purposes. Starting with RAID 0. RAID 0 is known as a striped disk, and it's the least redundant. There's no redundancy. If one drive fails, then you lose everything, but it performs the best. RAID 1, also known as disk mirroring, this configuration consists of at least two drives that duplicate the storage of data. There's no striping. Read performance is improved since either disk can be read at the same time. Write performance is the same for a single disk storage. If one drive fails, identical copy remains on the surviving drive. So that's the benefit of the RAID 1. Then you have what's called RAID 5. This level is based on block level striping with parity. The parity information is striped across each drive, allowing the array to function as if it was one drive if it was were to fail. The array's architecture allows read and write operations to span multiple drives. This results in performance that is usually better than that of a single drive, but not as high as that of RAID 0. RAID 5 requires at least three disks, but it's often recommended to use five disks for performance reasons. And this is also known as one of the most secure configurations. And finally, we have RAID 10 or RAID 1 plus 0. This is the best of both worlds because it's combining RAID 1 and RAID 0. This level is often referred to as RAID 10. This actually offers higher performance than RAID 1, but at a much higher cost. In a RAID 1 plus 0 configuration, the data is mirrored and the mirrors are striped as well. Removable storage. In removable storage, this is storage that can be removed very easily and transported to different locations. One of the most commonly types of removable storage would be flash drives. With flash drives, they're small, convenient. They can store lots of information in a small space. They're automatically found by the operating system and can be used as just a drive right there on the computer. Usually, a flash drive has five parts. You have the USB plug, the storage controller, the NAND flash memory, the oscillator, and a cover. And it's usually formatted with a FAT32 or exFAT file system. Optical drives are another type of removable storage. Optical drives use light or electromagnetic waves for reading and writing data to an optical disc. We're all very familiar with the CD-ROMs and the CDRWs. The compact discs or the CD-ROMs, they hold 700 megabytes of data. And this is one of the first optical formats. It uses a near infrared 780 nanometer laser diode, and it reads a series of bumps on the disc. Then we have the CD-RW, which is the same format as the CD-ROM, but it allows you to be read and write and erased on those drives. And this requires a sensitive laser optics. Then we move up to the DVD-ROM, and the DVD-ROM, or the digital versatile disc, holds 4.7 gigabytes of data. Now, after the initial burn, it's only read only on the DVD-ROMs. Information was saved on a single layer, and this is used was used to distribute large amounts of data, movies, programs, etc. And the same progress that the CD-ROMs fell in, the DVD-RW is the same thing. They are disk read and writable. You can read write or read write on those DVDs. Then we have the DVD-RW DL, which and the DL stands for dual layer. Now, this was a dual layer, not the single layer that held the 4.7 gigabytes of data, but the dual layer holds 8.5 gigabytes. And next in the removable storage, we move into the Blu-ray family. The Blu-ray family is a newer format, and a single layer holds 25 gigabytes of data. And this uses a blue or violet laser, and it reads and stores at a greater density. Then the same path we follow here. The BDR is a recordable format for Blu-ray. Then we have the BDRE, the readable, erasable, and rewritable format of Blu-ray. Okay, in this lesson, we talked about storage devices. We talked about hard drives, traditional drives, our new solid state drives, and their speeds and their form factors. We talked about the newer formats of the SSDs, the NVMEs, and we also covered some other form factors, the M.2, the MSATA. We talked about RAID and drive storage configurations. And finally, we finished off talking about removable storage. Thank you for being with me on this lesson, and I will see you in the next lesson.